Good. Hi, everyone. It's Niki here again, and I'm so happy to be here for our second lesson. We're still on the topic, staying safe online. But today I thought we'd start with a story. I have read some of your scam stories, and I thought it would be good to start with a story from someone else's perspective. So here is a romance scam, Georgina's story. Georgina's children signed her up to Facebook and gave her some basic lessons on how to use it. They told me everyone was using it and that it would help us keep in touch and see photos of my grandchildren. Next. One day, Georgina received a friend request from a serviceman. She accepted the request and allowed Jim to be her Facebook friend. He said he was lonely and looking for friends to keep him company. Jim told Georgina he had lost his wife to cancer, and his story was similar to her own experience when her husband had died of cancer. He then said he was being posted to Nigeria. He sent me pictures, which I now know were stolen from someone on the internet. He kept saying he couldn't wait for us to be together. We became very close, and he emailed me every day saying it was easier for him than using Facebook. Next. Jim told Georgina he wanted to set up a jewelry store when he retired. He said this was the best part of being in Nigeria because he could buy precious stones very cheaply there. He told Georgina he was coming to see her, but had some trouble with his bank card not working in Nigeria and couldn't get funds to pay for an export tax on his gemstones. Georgina transferred some money to him to cover the tax, which amounted to $15,000. It was a lot of money to send, but she figured he was a good and honest man, and if things worked out, they would spend the rest of their lives together. Next. All was going well until his stopover in Malaysia. Customs officials seized the gemstones and demanded payment to have them released. This time they were asking $20,000. I told him it would take some time to get the money, and I had to borrow against the family home. Georgina sent the money to Malaysian officials, but was told Jim was now in jail for smuggling and that she needed to contact his lawyer. Next. The lawyer said he needed to get an anti-terrorism certificate, and this would be another $10,000. He also needed to pay for Jim's court costs, plus his own fees, and this would be another $5,000. Georgina sent the money, but then Jim said there was another government official demanding payment to extend his visa. Almost every day I was contacted with a new demand for money. They sent me certificates signed by officials, forms to fill out, and bills for everything. If you wanted to get anything done quickly, you had to pay another fee. I don't know exactly how much money I sent, but it was well over $100,000. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted to help Jim, and I honestly thought he would pay me back. Next. Even when Georgina ran out of money, the demands didn't stop. Georgina finally talked to the police. They explained that her experience included the common features of a dating and romance scam, and it would be very unlikely she would get her money back. She can't help feeling in her heart that she let Jim down, but she knows in her head it was all a scam. Next. Next. So in Georgina's story, we see this terrible, terrible use of emotional manipulation. I talked about emotional manipulation a little bit last week, but today I want to just explain a bit more about it. So emotional manipulation, it's used by scammers to exploit their victims' feelings and vulnerabilities. So a victim's feelings are, it's how they feel, it's their emotions. They're not thinking, they're feeling. And their vulnerabilities are their weaknesses. And scammers are very good at figuring out what your weakness might be. So by provoking emotions such as sympathy, fear, or greed, scammers aim to manipulate individuals into taking actions that benefit the scammer. So manipulate actually means that they kind of control you, they twist you, they direct the individual so that the individual will take an action to benefit them. Next. So here are some ways scammers employ emotional manipulation. As we can see in love and romance scams. So in online dating or romance scams, scammers build emotional connections and romantic relationships with their victims. And we can see here how Jim has done that. He's made Georgina connect with him by telling her how lonely he is, how his wife had cancer. He's getting her to connect and to feel sorry for him. And he's talking about he's building up trust and affection with Georgina, because she says like that she can't wait for them to be together. He's emailing her every day. All of these things are making her feel connected to him. Next. And what a scammer does here is they appeal to sympathy. So the scammer might make up personal stories of hardship, tragedy, or medical emergencies to evoke sympathy. Sympathy is when you're evoking someone's pity, someone's kindness. And obviously Georgina is a very kind person. And so she starts to feel this huge sympathy for Jim. And the sympathy it happens because Jim is claiming to be in a desperate situation. And you notice how he builds it up. So first of all, he just needs export tax money. Then the customs officials have got him. And then he's in jail and he needs money for a lawyer. And all of these things, he kind of creates this situation where things are getting worse and worse. Georgina needs to help him more and more. And that's how he kind of hooks her in through these personal stories of hardship. Next. Now, the other thing that these scammers will do to emotionally manipulate is to use things like guilt and obligation. So Georgina feels guilty. She should help Jim. She feels like she has a duty to help Jim. So obligation means duty. So scammers sometimes manipulate their victims by making them feel guilty or obligated to comply with their demands. Comply means to give in, to do what they want. They might claim that the victim's inaction would cause harm to others, or that they have a personal connection or relationship that requires assistance. So all of these things, Jim has already built up this personal connection to Georgina by emailing her every day. Now he wants assistance. So she feels she has a duty. She feels guilty if she doesn't help. Next. So here I really want to talk about the way that scammers do this. And I want to talk about the heart and the head. This is so important. You notice that at one point in one of the slides, there's a statement where it says the scammer is tugging at heartstrings. And so scammers create intense emotional responses to distract victims from critically evaluating the situation. So what actually happens is that the way that we respond and we know other people and the world around us and society is that we're using emotional intelligence, we're using our heart, but we're also using rational intelligence. We have to have a balance of that to understand things properly, emotional and rational intelligence. What a scammer does is the scammer knows how to destroy that balance. So what happens is we get an intense emotional response, which wipes out all of the rational, clear-headed, critical response that we might have to a situation. And I talked last week about my experience with that, with the Hi Mum scam, where I should have been asking questions like, why is my son calling me on someone else's phone? Why doesn't he pay a bill using his computer? Why doesn't he use his wife's phone? But the whole time I'm thinking with my heart, and I'm like, my son, he's in trouble. I need to help. That's what a scammer does. They wipe out your ability to think critically, to think rationally. So you have a very intense emotional response. And that's the danger of the scam, that we are responding from a wrong place. Next. So I wanted now to talk about the very sad emotional impact of scams. So scams affect people emotionally and mentally, and these following emotional effects are very common: anxiety, shame, embarrassment, guilt, anger, depression, fear, loss of trust in others, loss of a sense of security or safety, grief. All of those words there that you see tell you about the horrible and very sad emotional effects that people have. So while they're also losing all their money financially, they're being, very badly affected. They are also being affected emotionally and mentally. These words here are all nouns, by the way. They're abstract nouns, just for your awareness, and we will come back to them in another class to talk about the language of them. But at the moment, I want to continue talking about Georgina. So next. So what I wanted to do this week, rather than just give you the questions and tell you to do a task, I do want you to do a written task, but I thought before you go and do that written task, we're going to actually have a little discussion. So the written task is, I want you to describe the emotional manipulation that is happening in Georgina's story. I want you to write a paragraph. You can write more than a paragraph if you want about that. But here are the questions I want us to talk about now. What kind of person is Georgina? What kind of person is Jim, the scammer? What techniques is the scammer, Jim, using to emotionally manipulate her? How is Georgina reacting to these techniques? Why do you think Georgina was an easy target for this kind of scam? Or you can even say why you don't think she should have been, but I do think possibly it's more likely she was an easy target. So I would like you to talk about that. And how do you think Georgina felt after finding out that she had been scammed? So these are some questions. They're, you could have other thoughts. But what I thought now is that we will open up a little discussion, not too long. I have to go quite soon, but a little discussion on this now. So that's what we're going to do. So thanks everyone for listening. And please do this homework for next week.